Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox, recording here to explain to you how you can clean up your master bus chain easily for way better results. Let's dive into it. Okay, if there's one thing that I have noticed when reviewing people's mixes and going inside of their DAW sessions is people tend to overcomplicate their master bus chains, usually using way too many plugins, going way too crazy, when in reality, it shouldn't be that complicated, and often the simpler your chain is, the better your results are. So with that being said, I'm gonna play a quick audio sample back for you, and then I'm gonna dive into my exact master bus chain, and I'm gonna highlight what I'm doing so you could do something similar and take something from this video to make your results way better. And I want you to stick around to the last technique. I think you're gonna be surprised. And the good news is that you could do this today with the gear you're currently using, specifically number 5. But with that being said, let's listen to the sample and then we'll dive into number 1. Okay, so number 1, and this is pretty straightforward. Keep your master bus chain lean and simple. What you see here on my screen is my entire chain. What I have is a little bit of a console emulator, just adding a little bit of character and harmonic excitement, then a compressor, a master bus compressor, a little bit of a tape saturator / clipper, a touch of EQ, and a limiter. And fun fact, this limiter is doing nothing. It's just bringing the average level of my mix up. So when I send it to the client, it's at least slightly louder than the unlimited version, but the limiter is not doing anything. It's not doing any gain reduction. I leave that for mastering. What I see all of the time are people using these crazy plugins, adding widening, using MS processing when they really don't know what the unit is doing, or just adding random plugins to their master bus chain, creating a lot of extra digital distortion, excess clipping, sometimes even phase issues. I've had people add reverb to their master bus chain. And the truth is, it does not have to be that complicated. Way more often than not, less is more. Less, but better. If you haven't read the book Essentialism, I highly recommend reading it. But anyway, yeah, my master bus chain often looks very similar to this, very straightforward. I'm using 5 plugins, and I'm really happy with the results that I get. Just a little bit of compression, tape saturation, maybe a touch of EQ. That's really about it. And of course, you can add a little bit of limiting if you want to make it louder for your client or when you're listening to your music on shuffle mode, if that's something you still do. And then of course, when you master, you could really make it nice and hot for release. So that's number 1. Simplify, for the love of God, your master bus chain. Okay, and this leads me into point number 2. On your master bus compressor, use a slow attack and a quick release. Now, caveat here, if you're doing hip hop production or maybe electronic music and you want to hear that pumping action on your mix, by all means, you could break this rule. It's not even really a rule. But if you are like most of us who are producing rock and metal and you want a nice, powerful, transparent sounding mix where it's nice and, in control, but not pumping, where you're not hearing audible compression, again, use a slow attack and a quick release. I rarely give absolutes like this and believe in kind of presets. I don't have a preset mentality, but this is one of those exceptions where, again, more often than not, those are the settings you're going to want to use. And in this case, again, you can look at my master bus compressor here. Yeah, super slow attack, almost on the slowest setting, and super quick release, again, almost on the fastest setting. So there you go. Use a slow attack, quick release on your master bus compressor. Okay, and this leads me into technique number 3, or point number 3, or piece of advice number 3. Please do not abuse EQ on your master bus. If we look at my EQ here, and this is even a lot for me, if I'm being honest with you, I'm dipping out about a dB and a half in the subs, a dB and a half in the upper low end or the lower mids, about a dB in the mid-mids, and then about a dB and a half at 1.5K, so the mid-range. Here's the thing, people will often try to fix their mix with EQ in post or on their 2-bus, and you have to remember whenever you tweak EQ on your master bus or 2-bus, that's affecting everything in your mix. So let me give you an example. Let's say your mix is sounding very bright because your guitars are EQ'd overly bright. If you try to darken your mix on the master bus, that's going to darken your drums, your vocals, any synths that you might have in the track, and maybe those tracks don't need to be darkened. Maybe it's just your guitars. Remember, we're mixers here. We have full access to our entire mix. It's way better to get the mix right in the mix itself. And then maybe at the end of the mixing process, you want to make fine-tune kind of adjustments on the EQ as a whole, like I'm doing here. And again, this is even a lot for me, if I'm being honest with you. There's nothing wrong with that. There are no rules, but there are, so to speak. Something to keep in mind, do not abuse EQ on your 2-bus. People do this all of the time. Again, with these fancy pants plugins, adding, oh God, what is that thing that everybody uses? Dynamic EQ, crazy stuff that you really don't need. Just get the mix right. Believe me, you'll be way better off. Okay, another one here. If you're into hot masters and nice loud mixes, you're going to want to use some form of clipper or tape saturator on your mix bus. And more importantly, mix through this plugin at the later part of the mixing stage. So right here, I'm using a very old plugin. People comment all the time on how old the plugins are that I use, but I don't care. They're still great plugins. You don't go into a studio saying, oh my God, you're using an old 1176. It's a classic. I believe there are classic plugins out there, and the Vintage Warmer 2 is one of them. I'm not sponsored by, I don't even know who makes this, PSP? PSP? That's a different plugin company. No, PSP. I'm not sponsored by them, and I really do love the Vintage 2 Warmer. It's sort of like a clipper, sort of like a tape saturator, kind of combined into one, and I mix through it toward the later part of my mix. And that helps shave off extra transient in a very musical way. You're making your decisions through the plugin, and that's gonna make getting your mix loud in the mastering stage so much easier, because you're gonna have a nice, more analog kind of mix with less spiky peaks all over the place. And again, people skip this. The thing I see all the time is people will take a spiky mix with nothing done to the transients and they slam it through a brick wall limiter, ending up with a very amateur sounding master. You don't want that. You want to do things subtly throughout the chain, so when you master, it's a piece of cake. So that's number 4. Mix through a clipper and or tape saturator. All right, and the last one, believe it or not, does have to do with your master bus. It doesn't really have to do with any plugins at all. And it's the thing that no one wants to do, even though it's absolutely free, and all of the pros do it. And it's simple. Use automation on your master bus. So if we go to that same section right before the chorus here, and we look at the chorus right here where the chorus kicks in, there's a little bit of a volume boost on my master bus. It's kicked up by about 2 dB, and then it stair steps down. Then finally by the second, I don't know, let's see here. By the second measure of the chorus, it's back to its normal volume. And what this does, because it's so subtle, is it adds extra punch when the chorus kicks in. And then the volume goes back down to normal throughout the rest of the chorus, and you don't really notice it. It just adds extra excitement and extra character and lets the listener know that we're onto a new part. So let's hear it from right before the chorus and then when the chorus kicks in. Check this out. Easiest trick in the book, and it makes such a big difference. And I think I do it right before the solo here as well. I just copy and pasted the automation right over. That subtle volume boost, even though it's only happening for a 16th note or an 8th note, really helps signal to the listener that a transition is happening. Automation is so powerful, and again, it's not exciting. You can't buy automation, it's a technique, but it makes your mixes so much more professional because you're adding actual musical movement within the mix itself. Do not skimp out on automation on your master bus or any other automation for that matter. Most people don't think to do this. I learned this during my internship and I've been using it ever since, and I can't live without it if I'm being honest with you. So that's number 5. Use volume automation on your master bus to add excitement to the transitions within your mix. So as you can see here, the plugins I'm using really don't matter. It's the technique and the workflow that I'm using to achieve the results that you're hearing. I don't care if you're using just stock plugins within your DAW. You should be able to craft a fully professional mix if you know what you're doing. The problem is most of us never get there because we're sidetracked by bad information, overcomplicating the process, and buying a bunch of crap that we really don't need. Now, I don't want this for you. I want you producing better results with the gear you're currently using. And because of this, I'm offering you direct access right now to my free training, 4 dead simple ways to massively improve your recordings and mixes. In this free training, you'll learn my number 1 technique for prepping heavy guitar tracks that virtually mix themselves. You'll also learn how to create instantaneous clarity within your mixes using any old stock EQ plugin. Also, finally learn how to take control over the levels in your mix so that instruments stop fighting with one another. And then finally, you will learn how to craft radio-ready vocal mixes using only stock plugins. Now, full disclosure, if you're one of these people that's constantly scrolling through TikTok and you have the friggin' attention span of a squirrel, please do not waste your time. Don't register for the training. This training is meant for people who are serious about audio production like I am. Now, if you are serious about the results that you're getting with your music and you're ready to take action, there's a link below to the free training in this video's description. Click it and it's all yours. Now, if you think I'm full of it and you do not believe me and you want proof, check out this video. In this video, I mix an entire song using the stock plugins within Reaper, a $60 DAW and free plugins, nothing else. And until next time, drink that, spindrift.